All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the We're Having a Good Time podcast. I'm Dusty Slay. I'm your host. I'm here with my wife and co-host,
Hannah Slay,
the artist formerly known as Hannah Hogan. It is Hannah Slay here. It's another late night podcast. Before we get into it, we would like to go ahead and discuss something. Last week, before recording the podcast, we went through a great, painstaking process of cutting individual pieces of double-sided tape and sticking it to the back of these small picture frames where I had printed out pictures of myself in comedy situations over the years. I mean, pictures with celebrities, pictures with comic friends of mine, pictures at clubs, and I had, I don't know, let's say 30 pictures, and I hung them all up on the wall with this sticky tape. I hung another big funny picture, a few other big posters with sticky tape or tape that where it'd be Velcro, tape on one side, Velcro, whatever on the other, and it was wonderful. I mean, it looked magnificent. I mean, it was really wow, this is great. It really, Hannah doubted me on it, and it just brought a lot of life to the room, the studio here, and it just felt good. And then we recorded a podcast on Wednesday night last week, and then I left on Thursday. And Hannah, if you just want to describe what you were hearing while I was gone.
Well, I was alone with the children throughout the week, and I just started hearing ominous thumping sounds at erratic times over the course of 3 or 4 days. It could have been bodies falling. It could have been walnuts falling from a tree. But in truth, it was just these pictures falling down from the wall in the studio on the second story of our house.
And some of the pictures, most of the pictures, what happened was the sticky just came off the wall. But in other instances, the sticky ripped the paint off the wall and fell. While there are still, I'm looking right now, there's still 9 pictures hanging.
I hear the baby crying.
All right. Well, I'll keep going. You want to check on him?
Okay.
All right. So what we do now is we put the children to sleep, and then we come up here and do a podcast. So what just happened was Hannah heard the baby crying as we were talking about pictures falling off the wall. But I can continue because we have so many things that we cram into a day. This month, I'm particularly busy because I'm doing more 3-night trips. So I'll go out on a Thursday and then come home on a Sunday. So it's 3-night trips, but it really ends up being, 4 days. So I'm only gone 3 nights, but I'm gone 4 full days. So then when I'm home, I'm only home for 3 days. So we're trying to, do all our normal family things, and also, in only 3 days. So that's what I have, 3 weekends like that this week. And then next week, I don't know if we'll be able to do a podcast. I'm sure we'll try to do one, and hopefully we will. But next week I come home on a Sunday, and then on Monday I'll be recording a Nateland episode, and then Tuesday I fly out to go do a corporate gig. I'm actually doing a corporate gig for Dale Earnhardt Jr., which is very exciting. I'm a 90s racing fan, meaning I've just not been into it since I was a kid. I mean, when I was growing up, my family was really into NASCAR, and so I really watched a lot of NASCAR. We collected a lot of NASCAR. I'm very, very familiar with 90s racing. I'm about as familiar with 90s NASCAR as I am 90s Braves. 90s Braves are about the only for sure, the only baseball team that I could name the entire lineup. So I don't know, and then I'll come home and then leave again. So I don't know. We'll try to get one in, I'm sure, but there is no guarantees. But Hannah's back.
Yeah, the baby's still crying, so I don't know if this podcast is going to continue on without me or just stop.
Well, what I'd like to do is I could go through a little where we've been, where we're going.
Okay.
If you think that'd give you enough time to
We'll see.
to tend to our sweet son.
We'll see. I was having so much fun on this podcast.
And then I'll just try to keep going. But Hannah has a really great podcast lined up for us.
I do. I have a pretty fun bit about rats.
So I'm excited to tell some rat stories. So if I'm not done with where we've been, where we're going, by the time she gets back, we'll probably stop the podcast. You don't really need to know all this. We could probably just edit all this, but I'll be honest. I like doing a podcast where I don't have to do any editing. Last week, if I had joked about it on the podcast, I would have left it in, but I'm going to tell you anyway. You know, sometimes when you sneeze, you also fart a little bit. Well, I did that on the podcast. And and if I had made a joke about it, then I wouldn't have cared. But I didn't want somebody to listen to this podcast, hear me sneeze and fart at the same time, and then it be some joke. This is like childhood trauma, I think. I got a couple of farting jokes that I'm doing now on stage occasionally, but the gist of it is that, I don't really find farts funny. I don't like them as a joke. I don't like, farting in an area and then being like, ha, 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 I just did that. Farting's a little bit traumatic for me. I don't know why, but not the act of doing it. I mean, obviously I love doing it. Who doesn't? I don't know anybody that has to pass gas that doesn't love letting it out. But, when I was growing up, I mean, it just felt like farting in school was like the most embarrassing thing. I mean, it was just the worst. I mean, I could... my mom used to make me these cinnamon rolls, and they were canned cinnamon rolls, but they were absolutely delicious. And I would eat them and love every minute of it. And then I would go to school, and later that day, I would be real sick to my stomach and need to poop. But I would not do it. I would not do it at school. And I don't know that I ever did. I might have done it one time, but I really don't know that I ever pooped in school my entire school career. So I would just be in pain. I would just be in stomach pain. I would just live through it. That's probably why I have digestive issues now. There's a lot of reasons why I might have digestive issues. But I can go ahead and do a little where we've been, where we're going, and hopefully not have to do any editing on this podcast. I'll try to not drag it out, but I'll try to be detailed. This past weekend, I went to Tacoma, Washington. I've been to Seattle, Washington before, which Seattle and Tacoma are the same airport. And then I've been to Puyallup, Washington for a fair one time. I've got a YouTube video on my time in Puyallup, Washington, and at the end of it, my audio was a little messed up. I left the background music a little too loud for what I was saying, but I just left it. And people commented all the time. They go, the background music could be a little quieter. And I'm like, yeah, it could. It could be louder. You know what I mean? So there's a lot you can do with audio these days. So, I'm not ever, if a video of mine is like perfectly edited and it's like, wow, this is great editing, somebody else probably did it. And it's not that I can't do it, but I like stuff that's a little rough around the edges. I'm into kind of a rough edited podcast. That stuff's fun to me. I like a rough edited video, but I've not been doing a lot of videos like that. I haven't done one in a while. I used to do top 5 country songs. I really like that, but I just got out of doing it. I'm doing a lot of comedy these days, and with 2 podcasts a week, I just get pretty tired. But I went, and 2 kids. I guess I forget to mention that sometimes. Back when I was editing all these videos, I didn't have kids. I mean, kids literally change everything. I mean, you go from all your free time being spent, just on your own. I mean, Hannah is a very independent person, and I'm a pretty independent person. So before we had kids, we just had loads of free time because, especially when we moved into this house, we had extra bedrooms. Hannah could be in a room. I could be in a room. We could be working on our own creative projects. But kids take up all your time. And personally, I feel like if they're not taking up all your time, you're being selfish to your kids. Hannah's back now.
Hey, guys.